Welcome to the Princess and the Bee podcast, the place to be to build your empire as queen of your body, business, and life. I'm your host, Kimberly Spencer, founder of crownyourself.com, and I'm an award-winning coach, Amazon best-selling author, and multi-passionate entrepreneur. Each week, I give you the systems, strategies, and success stories to help you master your mindset, communicate with ease, and triple your productivity so you make the income and the impact you deserve. Imagine this podcast as your weekly spark of inspiration as you take it to the next level with all the B's of your life: body, business, bank account, boys, and babies. Let's make it rain. Hello and welcome back to The Princess and the Bee. I am so excited to have you here today because I am so fired up and also powered on like 2 cups of ketone coffee. So I am like rip and rearing and ready to go. And we are diving into today one of my favorite B's of all the B's that's not actually listed in the description of this podcast. It is the B of belief. Like, I know we talk a lot about business and bank accounts and bodies and babies and boys and all the things that starts with the B, but I think the biggest one out of any of them is belief. And it comes down to a belief in yourself, because if you don't have that deeper sense of belief, then the results in the physical form in your relationship with your kids, or your relationship with your man, or your relationship with your bank account, or your relationship with your business, because everything's a relationship, as we know, it's not going to be thriving. And the big thing with the B of belief today that just hit me as I was rereading actually, a book by Marianne Williamson called The Law of Divine Compensation. And this law is one of many of the natural laws of the universe. Many of you I know are familiar with the law of attraction. There's also the law of karma, or the law of cause and effect, where there's always an effect to any action. There are many, many laws of the universe, but the law of compensation is one that I was really, I've been exploring a lot recently, of just refocusing. Over the past few years, I've been really managing my own personal relationship with money and what that's meant to me and what I've seen growing up and all of that. And there was something that really struck me as I was reading this book. And I will definitely link to this book in the show notes, because if you haven't read it, like, it came out several years ago, but if you haven't read it, like, go to Amazon right now and buy it, because it's amazing. It's amazing, and it will change your world. I read it way back in 2013 when I was with my first e-commerce company. I was the president of this startup, and back then I was dealing with some money stuff, some money issues, and I figured, like, oh, I got my body stuff sorted, and it was right in the beginning of my relationship with Spike, and I was like, oh, I got that relationship stuff sorted out, because I already had told Spike that I was going to marry him. Like, it was just going to happen. But the money thing seemed to be this constant struggle, and so I was dealing with this struggle while in this relationship, this business partnership, and this relationship with my e-commerce business. And there were a lot of self-worth issues that I was dealing with, and a lot of money things, because I was not making bank back then. Like, it was slim pickings, and there was a lot of stuff being spent on credit cards. And for me, something that I really that hit me looking back, because I write in all of my books. Like, my books are like I very rarely give out to other people my personal development and business marketing and any business development books, because they are so journaled in that people will, they'll see my whole thought process, which sometimes can seem like a little crazy, and B, it's like they're so journaled in that sometimes it's distracting. Like, I actually found in the first chapter of rereading this book that it was distracting me from the content that was written, because
I look back on where I was and my belief systems and where I was back in 2013, and I was a very, very different person. I had a lot of self-doubt. I had a lot of shame and guilt still left over. I had a lot of forgiveness that I had to do of myself. And it was before, I'd had several experiences, and yet I hadn't had the emotional capability to deal with them. As many of you know who listen to my friends Alan and Kevin over at the Hyper Conscious podcast, I shared some very deep and personal experiences that I went through back in 2012, and that really shaped my belief in what I deserved. And so let me just take a sip of my ketone coffee for a hot second. To refresh those vocal cords. So one of the big things is belief in yourself. And back then I didn't have a belief in myself, and my net worth really, really, really reflected it. Because while I had a fancy title, the money for me was not rolling in. And back then this passage really, really struck me in the law of divine compensation, was just the spirituality of consistency. Because I can tell you this, my results back then were not consistent. And I know as entrepreneurs, one of the top things that most of my clients struggle with, most people struggle with, is consistency. And now why is that? And because when you don't have consistency, you have mixed results. And yet, why is it that we struggle with consistency? Well, here's the thing. The laws of nature are consistent. The universe, God, whatever you choose to call that source, the universe, source, God, whatever you choose to call it in your belief system, I personally call him God. Or her, God, whichever gender you choose to assign to it. But that spirituality of the universe, God is consistent. The laws of nature are consistent. Like the law of cause and effects, like when you do something shitty to somebody else, something's going to have to shift for you in order to shift you back into alignment. So the laws of nature are consistent, but why is it that we as humans, and sometimes especially as entrepreneurs, we struggle with consistency? And here's the thing. Limiting beliefs are not consistent. So back in 2013, as I was going through this book and seeing all my pages and pages and pages of notes, I saw all the limiting beliefs that I had back then. That was also back before I was trained in NLP, where I knew certain things like the unconscious mind doesn't process negatives. So there were lots of like, I am not going to be such and such. And I was like, oh, well, I was just reaffirming in my mind that I was going to be such and such. Just because our unconscious mind doesn't process negatives. But as I was going through, I was seeing all the beliefs that I had back in 2013, and limiting beliefs are not consistent because they are totally plagiarized and person dependent. And that's the amazing thing about limiting beliefs. And that's the great thing about limiting beliefs too, because if something is not consistent, you can change it. That's the amazing thing about beliefs and about any belief, limiting or not. Your beliefs you can change. A belief is just a thought you think over and over and over and over. Well, if you think thoughts that are in alignment with the universe, which are in alignment with the true nature, and on a metaphysical realm, it's there's only one true emotion, and that is love. So on that level, if you believe that love is the consistent thing and that fear is just an illusion and that love is that consistent thing, and any belief that doesn't align with love and therefore is not consistent, like that's what's going to allow your whole world to shift. So how does this apply to us as entrepreneurs and as businesswomen who maybe sometimes struggle with consistency? And I think the thing is is we struggle with consistency when we're not seeing the results. But what do the results really go back to? Do the results go back to a belief that you need those results? Do those results go back to something that is a limiting belief that maybe you don't believe you deserve to have all that you desire? Because sometimes when we drop our consistency in something that we know in our soul feels aligned, then a lot of times that really goes into a limiting belief somewhere in there. Or it's a lesson that maybe you need to learn that you don't need to have that specific thing to be okay, to be loved, to be whole. Because if you're attaching your results to any sort of definition of who you are, sometimes you're not going to get those results because that result isn't who you are. You are just an extension of the creator of the universe. You are a being of love and of light. So if you believe that result makes you more or less of a business owner, or makes you more or less of a woman, or makes you more or less of a better person, that result doesn't really make you a better person. You are a better person because you choose to be a better person, because you make conscious choices every single day, regardless of your circumstances. So I challenge you on, where are you lacking consistency in something? And I don't mean being consistent in things that aren't really driving you forward. Like, where are you lacking consistency in the things that are tugging at your heartstrings, that are tugging at your soul, and you're not doing them all the time 100%? Like for me, for example, I have had my book, Mindful Meals, and originally the subtitle was How to Eat Like a Queen and Still Look Like a Princess. That has since changed. It is now How to Eviscerate Food Fears and How to Reign in a Body That Rules, because it's more about the mental aspects of it. But I have had this book in my mind and on my heart for 5 years. And while it was tugging at my heartstrings, my limiting beliefs back then, 4 or 5 years ago, were constantly tugging back and saying, well, who's going to read it? Well, you're going to put all this work in, but, is that, it could just be like your other company where you put all this work in and then, it fails or you fail. And I had all these past stories about, should I even do this? Even though, like, my soul was crying out from the depths of my soul, like from the bellows from the bottom of my heart, it was saying, write this book, Kim, get it out into the world, serve people with this. It's going to serve people. And I just know, because it's how I completely reprogrammed my mind from having a 10-year battle with an eating disorder and without any medical or psychological intervention. Like, it is it is so freaking powerful, but I was so scared to tap into that power because I was feeling so powerless. I had beliefs that were inconsistent with really what the thing that I was going after, what my soul, what my heart, what my being as an extension of the creator was saying, write this book, put this out into the universe. This is why you went through these struggles, so you could serve many, many, many more women with this book. Go forth, put it out there. And for 5 years, I really, really sat on it. And I was like, meh. And I had it, kind of like half written, and I would write things, or I would write down ideas from time to time. And I would really sort of like play with it and like, here's my fancy Scrivener app, which is, by the way, fantastic for writing a book. Like, no offense to Scrivener. It was just me and my projection with it, where that was my pattern, where I would do the things of like, I'm going to get the app, I'm going to get the nice software, but then I wouldn't really follow through with the actual action. And so I wasn't being consistent with that calling. And so that's what I'm talking about, is really about being consistent with the things that you naturally in your gut feel like you are called to do. It is not just like a task. Because a lot of times we can be really, really skilled, especially as entrepreneurs, with busying ourselves and being consistent with things that are not really our soul's mission, that are not really within our genius zone. They're not really the things that drive us forward and drive our business forward and drive our level of impact forward. They can be consistent things. Like, you can consistently be, for example, and I'm no offense to anyone writing blogs. Like, I write blogs. I love writing blogs. You can be consistent with writing blogs, but unless you are sharing them, unless you are putting them out there, unless you're saying, okay, this is coming from my soul and I'm putting this out there, and then I'm going to share it with every single person on the planet because they need to hear this information. Like, my ideal by putting this out there on a grander level, rather than having it like, I'm going to write it on my blog and then I'm not going to share it with anybody, but it's going to be there. And that's the thing. That's the difference in the level of consistency. Like, sometimes we can be consistent in those things that we feel are, kind of sort of important, but they're not necessarily our soul's calling. Or we can be consistent in those things that we do, but then we keep them playing small. Like, we put it out there, but we keep playing small about it. We keep, we hide it. We take our light and we hide it under a rock, in essence. Like, we're like, I put the content out there. It's out there. If people come to my website someday, they will see it. But is that really the most effective use of your consistency? Because spirituality, God is consistent. So in the things that your soul is being called to do, what are those things that you need to be consistent in? Because those are the things that are going to be driving your business forward. Those are the things that are going to be driving your life forward. Like, for me, with my relationship with Spike, like, I have to be consistent in really spending time with him, or else that relationship doesn't really feel like it's getting as nurtured as it could. Same with Declan. In my relationship with Declan, there are certain things that I do consistently, like, meaning on a daily basis, to where I make sure that we are nurturing and growing that relationship that I have been blessed with the most amazing son and the most amazing husband. Like, why wouldn't you want to continue doing that? The same is true for your soul's work, the purpose, the reason why you are on this planet, that work that you are being called to do, that thing that is kind of scaring you, that's the thing that you need to be more consistent with. Because any limiting belief that is going against that consistency, that is going against, and that is going against really putting it out there on that grand level, whatever belief there is in that's saying, you can be consistent, but like, maybe you should like be consistent on a weekly basis instead of on a daily basis. Or maybe you should maybe consistency, like, do you really have to do it every day? Like, could you maybe do it like once a week, once a month, once a year? That is when limiting beliefs start counteracting with your consistency, and thus they start counteracting with your results. And you actually getting the stuff out there. You getting the projects and all the things that you want to create and all the things that your soul is calling you to create. But that is where it gets mixed messages to the universe so that it doesn't really manifest. And it gets mixed messages with your unconscious mind, which is tied to higher consciousness. So, if you loved this coffee-infused message today, please take a screenshot and tell me on Instagram what your top takeaway was. And for those of you who leave a review, I do have a special hypnosis for you. If you take a screenshot of your review and you email it to info@crownyourself.com, I will send you a free hypnosis that is only for those of you who write reviews and send them to us. So I won't know how to get in contact with you. I won't know if it's your review if you don't email it to us. So if you loved this episode, please share it with your friends, give us a review, take a screenshot of it, email it to us, and I want to send you a free hypnosis as my gift to you. And I thank you so much for listening. As always, my fellow empire builders, own your throne, mind your business, and make it rain.
Thank you so much for tuning in today. If what you heard resonated with you, be sure to subscribe and share your breakthroughs and ahas with me by leaving a review on iTunes so I can keep the magic flowing your way. And if you aren't already following us on social media, come experience the extra inspiration and queenly convos on Instagram at Crown Yourself Now, or visit our website at crownyourself.com. I am so excited to connect with you in the next episode. And in the meantime, go out there and create a body, business, and life that rules.